Yeah. Sorry, that's a major stuff up.
Und we are live.
Einen wunderschönen guten Abend. Es ist wieder Dienstagabend, 19 Uhr und wir freuen uns von Herzen, dass Sie wieder mit dabei sind. Wir haben heute eine besondere Überraschung. Wir starten nicht nur mit einem Top-Gast, nämlich Sheryl Kingston, sondern wir werden heute im Verlaufe der Sendung auch noch Laurie McCabe mit dabei haben. Und as you already know, we start in German and switch then to good old English, and love to keep you posted about all the interesting things which come around and happen. We are luckily that we got Sheryl Kingston aboard in our session, and she has done some up-to-date research on some very interesting topics we would love to share. And I would like her to introduce herself. Sheryl, thanks for being with us, and thanks you for taking the time and sharing what you found out.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this is very interesting. Love participating on these. This has really grown in attention, especially in this past year. And it's very apropos to the topic of hand, which is really what's going on with digital maturity. And a lot of the research I have is twofold. We look at what enterprises are doing, especially as it relates to customer experience in commerce, because I'm the head of customer experience in commerce at 451 Research, which is now part of S&P Global. And so we look at everything as it relates to digital, from ad tech to martech to sales, commerce, and service. A lot of what I'm covering has to do with the data-driven experience and how we can really improve these customer experiences. And then from there, when we do look at it at the enterprise level, hey, Laurie.
Hey, Sheryl.
The topic really that we're looking at has to do with, yes, the digital maturity at the enterprise level and where it's trying to go and what the reality is there, but also as it relates to what the consumer insights are going to give us using some of these technologies. And some of the other research I have is also connected to the voice of the connected user landscape. And it's a lot of the consumer behavioral dynamics that we have around the new normal. And so we recently came out with some research that has to do with what are we expecting in this reimagined world in the future? And so we look at things like who are cutting edge and how they're going to remain digital. What are the converts? Like, did they try something new over this past year, and are they going to stay there? And then the conservatives, the one that tried it, hated it, and they're going to go back. And so that's where we tie some of this consumer research with a lot of the enterprise research that we have. So that's exactly where we have, and a lot of it actually is tying towards digital maturity. And so that's really what I'm here to discuss today.
Hey,
Cool.
Laurie. So first of all, a big, well, starting with a thank you for both of us being there, and then big apologies from my side because I stuffed up the appointment.
So, oh, no problem.
that makes the excitement of live.
So yeah, and I just had to run off and turn off my dryer from beeping. So
on the bright side, we have not just one of my favorite analysts and friends, but two of them. So this should be a very good show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's great to see everyone here. Nice to see you all.
And it's marvelous from my end, coming from good old Germany, that we have here two specialists with very knowledgeable parts and pieces and research, which is to the favorite areas where we are looking for the enterprise on one side, for the small, medium business on the other side. And some of the economical drivers, especially what we have discussed in earlier phases of our convos, is my learning from Marshall that the mom and pop store is more or less what is in Germany Tante Emma. The smaller shops which really drive empathic and empathy-driven the needs of people right now, and which are, for me, a big hope that they will be some of the power we need to get restarted.
Okay. Well, I guess we should probably have Laurie introduce herself, as Sheryl's already had a go. Tell us about yourself, Laurie. Who are you?
Yeah.
Why are you here?
Why am I here? Because you invited me. Is the main thing. Yeah. But yeah, no, if I haven't met people on the call tuning in, Laurie McCabe, and I'm one of the co-founders of SMB Group. It stands for Small and Medium Business. We tried to keep the name simple. And we focus entirely on how small and medium businesses use technology in their businesses. And, you know, we've been around about 10 years, so we've definitely seen things shift a lot over time. And technology 10 years ago was kind of a support mechanism, but now it's becoming more and more important to a greater number of the small and medium companies out there. And by the way, we define small and medium business. Small is 1 to 100. Medium is 100 to 1,000. We also have something called mid-market, which is 1,000 to 2,500. But in there, we segment very finely, like, you know, business of 1, business 2 to 5, that kind of thing. So we have a pretty fine-tuned idea of what's going on. And, you know, especially on the lower ends of SMB, it's very different from enterprise in terms of both requirements and constraints and sophistication and all kinds of things. But you see kind of as they get larger and they start hiring specialists for things like sales and marketing, then they start to take on some more of the enterprise characteristics. So it's a fun, very diverse market. And I just hope I can lend some perspectives to the conversation that you all want to have.
Would be surprised if you couldn't.
Well, you never know when the dryer's going to beep or the dog's going to bark, but we'll.
Oh, we already discussed that. I almost had a pet sitter not show up this morning for this recording.
Yeah. I'm past worrying about that. You know, she's 7 months old, the lab.
Oh, but so is mine 7 months, and I was freaking out.
Yeah, we ought to put them both on here. You know, I heard you can rent a goat now for these meetings from somewhere in England and have the goat make an appearance. So.
No, I just passed her off. I'm like, here, take her.
Okay, so one of the main topics that we'd like to drill into today is digital maturity. So based also and mainly on the research that Sheryl and her team did recently. So it's about getting into data-driven experiences, and parallel to that, based on the second research, is now that we all went digital. Now that we all did go digital, or well, grammar, Germans. So now that we all did go digital, life sooner or later will change back to something else. So we got uprooted more or less. We went into another state of mind. Mm-hmm. And my theory there normally is it's like a pendulum. So you get swung into one direction, and that will swing back. To some extent, maybe there is some overswinging or not. So these are the two key topics that are really exciting for me right now, which is where will we end? Where will we be in half a year? Yeah.
Well, I just think, you know, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, everything changed with the pandemic, like what we want to buy, how we want to buy, where we want to buy, when we want to buy, who we want to buy from. You know, what's important in the whole experience. So as you're saying, Thomas, you know, the data underlying, you know, how people make these decisions has been in a big state of flux. And I think, as you said, it's going to change again. I mean, personally, I don't think we're going to go back to what we have. I think we're going to be, you know, figuring out something different again.
Because with that said, exactly what Thomas is trying to get at, the whole trying to forecast for the new normal and where we are is the data that we do have is roughly around 20% were cutting edge prior. They were the ones that were digital before. They're going to stay digital. They've actually increased a lot of their digital behaviors. And so the data that we might have had in the past could still be relevant for that kind of cutting edge audience. Where it becomes very mixed is the middle. And so that's what we call converts. And so when we do look at some of the data around the adoption of some of these new mobile apps, the adoption of curbside pickup, some of the cross-channel engagement, customer service as it relates to these digital experience, that's where the middle have really stayed. It's anywhere between 42% and 50%, depending on the surveys and what it is, are converts. These are ones that try digital experiences, were loving digital technologies prior, but they weren't quite there yet. And they learned. They started some subscription models. They did some curbside pickup. And they have decided that they're going to continue that behavior. And we do and will see a continuation of this cross-channel customer engagement. And this is where what Laurie was saying with the data, the prior data that you might have had might not be relevant to target these new converts because they've changed. And that's where real time becomes absolutely critical. And then we got the conservatives. And those are the ones that try digital. They may have been forced to. They might have done some online groceries, some curbside pickup, but they want to go back. And so the data that we have is they tried it, they didn't like it, and they do want to go back. So there's roughly around 20% of the market that still wants to go back to the way it was. And so the question is, how are we setting ourselves up for success in 2021 and into 2022? Because we will have a mixed environment even more than we did prior. So we were already before COVID talking about the shift to digital. So now we have to talk about really updating our models, using the data in more real time. And that's where I'm going to pass it off to Laurie a little bit too, is small and medium-sized businesses really got blindsided here. But my data shows and that they really embraced, some of them really did embrace the change. And so that's a good thing because some of their consumers are part of those converts, and that will continue, and we don't want to leave them behind. And it's really interesting to see some of these changes. Exactly. Sorry. To some
we
of
all
these
have
changes.
puppies now. That changes us.
So the COVID nature, right? So it's not just the enterprise shift. So enterprises were struggling. They did shift. Oh, how cute!
He's adorable. Well,
also got three daughters who just brought the puppy in.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, so I should have left mine home. Sorry.
There's like a perfect example though, Thomas. So many people got puppies. I mean, 3 of us here got puppies, right? And it has changed our lifestyles. I mean, Sheryl's getting a dog sitter. I've got mine in doggy daycare a couple of days a week. What I am and not going to do, like, in terms of getting out is going to change. But I think it's just kind of important to take a step back from the data and just think about, instead of like, do you want to do things digitally or not digitally or this way or that way? It's more about what experience do you want now, right? And we're going to be craving some experiences that we haven't had a chance to have. Maybe I know in Massachusetts, we're going back to, full capacity dining. I did go out to dinner the other night, but it was still only 50% capacity, and I felt pretty comfortable. I don't know if I'm ready for 100% capacity, so I don't know if I want to go in that restaurant at 100% capacity. So some of it is about digital versus, real physical world, but some of it is, what are people going to be comfortable with? How quickly are they going to be comfortable? And can you kind of tune into that? And a lot of that's going to be very in the moment. If you're in something like a restaurant business, you'll be able to tell, do people walk in the door and say, wait, this is way too crowded, I'm going somewhere else? Or do they sit down and they're feeling good about it?
Yeah, and it's also financial. So I know we don't really want to have it all about the data, but we do see that, again, when it comes to the personas, that it's not just the health concerns, right? It's also the financial concerns. Right. Because there is a segment of the market that was strategically hurt by some of the layoffs and where we are.
And restaurants are an excellent example of that.
Exactly. So as
really need those.
Okay, it's Layla's turn.
Oh my God, mine's 12 pounds. I can't even show you because
she's a lab.
All right.
Oh.
All right, no more business talk. Let's just talk.
Yeah, let's just do
no. But
yeah,
again,
I mean, it's just going to be a lot of really looking at the data, but also I think really keeping an ear to the ground, really, as Michael Dell always says, always having your listening ears on and picking up on the sentiments, which obviously we can do some of that with data, but some of that just comes from real actual conversations we're having with people about how they feel. And, getting back to, I think we were talking about the other day with Paul and Brent, this whole idea of empathy, right? Mm-hmm. How important that has become. And, it's got to be more than just you say you're empathetic. I think we all have to kind of take a step back and, figure out, we're really tuning in? Are we really getting at the subtext of what is driving people's behaviors right now?
Mm-hmm. Which was prior to COVID also, right? So even prior to COVID, we talk about how experience was the currency of the future and where we were trying to go, or shall I say emotion, is the currency of the future of the customer experience. And so absolutely. But how can businesses, let's bring it back to the topic at hand also, how can businesses plan? What can they do in place? We've spent the year coming out and now we have to plan for another shift in the future. That shift is going to require a little bit of a straddle as people go back to normal. And so that's where we do have to take a look and constantly look at where are we with this maturity model within ourselves? Like, how are our processes going to change in 2021? What about the adoption of the cloud? That helped us in 2021. We want to continue it, but do I truly maximize the efficiency adopting some of these cloud services? Getting back to the data, we do have to still track our data, whether we have that connection or not. We still fundamentally need it. There is a segment of the market that really is trying to put more real-time decision-making into the hands of businesses and different lines of businesses. And then what action are we going to take, right? So one of the questions we had is, so what are we going to do in this upcoming year? Well, some of the data that I do have comes back to tracking of those metrics. And something that really did change this past year was a huge improvement about tracking customer engagement in the digital channels, right? Because we need to still capture that because it's going to stay relevant even in 2021 and 2022. So the fact that businesses are shifting more to understanding what's going on in that digital environment, tracking those customer engagement channels, and if they were digital prior to COVID, they were actually in a better place during this past year. So the reason for that is some of the data we took a look at in this past half a year when we talked about the digital maturity is businesses that were digitally driven prior to 2019 versus ones that had just started a lot of the digital enablement during COVID actually had a 15-point improvement in metrics. So it's just a lesson learned that you can't delay some of these initiatives. And even if you're a small business, you have to embrace it because this is the world that we are in today. Yes, I might go back into a restaurant, but more than likely, I really liked making that potential order on Uber, and I want to potentially going to shift my reservation online to OpenTable. I might not have been an OpenTable user before. I might not do delivery for a very long time the minute I can go back into a restaurant, or I might have to do delivery because I got that new puppy and she doesn't allow me to go to the restaurant, bringing it back to the puppy.
We have a banner visible for quite some time now. In how far does that tally with the experiences that the two of you, both of you have? Is that
what's the question? I'm sorry, I missed the question.
Yeah, sorry. No.
In how far does this banner that we see, the target Q4 earnings report, in how far does that tally to the experiences that you make and the data points that you do see in your
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see that in, we've done a few studies this past year about how SMBs are changing their business models, the channels they're using, all kinds of stuff. And definitely the ones that have what we call the ones that have managed to adapt, we call them the adapters. They've to use that overused word, pivoted. They've pivoted and done the things they need to serve up either what they do differently or to serve up something completely new sometimes, right? Those companies are definitely outperforming the ones that are kind of saying, we're just going to hunker down and wait till this blows over, because, it's obviously now taken a year and it hasn't blown over. So I think it's only common sense that the ones, in any size business that expands their channels, changes up the business model, changes the way they offer their products and services. Some of it may not land right, but the odds that they're going to have some hits are probably pretty high.
This is our moment for transformation, I think. We've talked about going digital. A lot of what we've talked about is just using digital tools to accomplish what we had been doing in a more analog form. The hybrid shopping model, for example, is, I think, something that's kind of a net new. It was coming, where you could use a brick and mortar shop as a showroom before you ordered something online, or do your research online and then go to the shop and buy it. But now it is not only easier, it is better, because it's almost the only way to shop for a lot of things.
Yeah, just like the comment that you've put up on the screen, for retail kind of shopping, and I don't mean going out to a restaurant or if you need some kind of, professional services or something like that. But for retail shopping, today you almost get a more personalized experience online than in most stores, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be that. So part of the data that I'm trying to instill in the retail environment is there is a subset of the market, a pretty substantial subset of the market, that is looking to go back in store. And so what are we doing to empower those store associates to make sure that return to store is the experience that a lot of consumers are starting to crave? Going back to your emotional connection that you said in the restaurants, Laurie. And so we do have a segment of the market that will go back, and we do have a segment of the market that was shopping online primarily because the retail store was not making the connection they have with the consumers. Right. So what are we doing to make the connection with those consumers that do want to go back in store? How are we making, and the data that I have is the store associate is absolutely critical there. It's that frontline worker in the retail experience. And so we need to engage and give them the tools to make that experience worthwhile and timely. Give them the inventory control. Give them the ability to check access of size and information about the product. They can't be in excerpts and everything, so guide them at point of interaction with the tablets. We've been talking about this for years, and now it really is the time to do something about it.
And it depends again on the, again, you have to slice and dice all this, because I was just thinking of a conversation I had with a friend lately who we've been going to like TJ Maxx and Marshalls throughout this pandemic. And believe me, it's not because of customer service. It's like the thrill of the hunt. That's why we go. You never know what you're going to find. And maybe you men are not into this, but a lot of women, that's why they go shopping. So, there's one kind of shopper that's looking for a lot of personalized, hands-on kind of service. There's another one that just wants to go in and explore and hopefully find that great bargain, right? So you've got to know who you're catering to and how you're going to cater to them, and whatever experience they're craving, make that, relevant for them, right?
There is an interesting aspect, and I jump in as I see one of the aspects of more empathy in CRM is that the knowledge of the, as you said, the shop clerk, the knowledge I was missing, the expertise in being a helping hand, a knowledgeable helping hand, and not just assisted reading from a product package. This is what I'm missing. And
but the problem with that is we were failing on that long before COVID. right?
Absolut.
We were hiring low-skilled, untrained, hourly wage to pretty much transact the order.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be reality moving forward if you want to engage. And it really depends on where we're trying to go. Yes, maybe that's not the Marshall shopper, right? Maybe that's, but there is still a very large segment of the market that does want that loyalty shopper, that does want that store guidance. And it's really more of the decision to purchase, right? The ones that need to go in the guidance.
Let's look at it realistically. You know, we can't even in this country get a $15 minimum hour, $15 an hour minimum wage. Are we really going to get highly qualified, highly empathetic people working in our retail stores that are going to, maybe at the very high end, you know, if you're at Tiffany's, I would hope so. But, you know, that's not going to happen in Walmart and Macy's and Target. It's just not going to happen.
No, but that's where they're going to have to make it more efficient, right? That's where we do have to look at contactless checkout. And we just have another comment here on the food industry, meaning customer experience and how businesses don't invest to make the customer experience at the forefront. And it's kind of sad that people think that way, because I do know that when I do look at it, we did see that customer experience and improving the customer experience actually became a high priority in the past year, and even ones that were delayed, ones that were digitally delayed. So prior to last year, there was a 31-point difference of businesses that were not prioritizing the customer experience. Now, maybe this wasn't the food industry and the restaurant industry, but what I'm trying to get at here is that closed over this past year, and now it's pretty equal. There's not a lot of differentiation between ones that were behind and ones that were more advanced on prioritizing the customer experience. Now, the food industry got pummeled, right? So what's going to happen in the food industry moving forward? And I do think they need to invest in the customer experience to bring them back into the restaurants.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no question. Customer experience is key. I'm just saying different environments demand different, it's a different definition of what's a great customer experience. So a great customer experience in a high-end restaurant is a whole lot different than what you think is a great customer experience in McDonald's. A great customer experience in Neiman Marcus is really different than what you think is a great one in TJ Maxx.
Right, everyone can agree to that.
You so, really, So I mean, or even LL Bean, that's another great example. I mean, most of that is digital, but you know, how easy is it to return? How, you know, did they pay for postage? Do they do this? Do they do that? So customer experience is about personalization in some cases, but sometimes it's just about choice, speed, efficiency. You know, like Amazon, that's a perfect example. People love Amazon. They've got unbelievable choice. They've got unbelievable speed. It's easy to return. So customer experience means many, many, many different things to different people in different environments.
Yeah, I agree, Laurie. But let's just look at the food business for a little bit, the ones that was pummeled, right? And let's take a look at some of the businesses that adapted and shifted and pivoted, right? So high-end restaurants, they couldn't just go too quickly to delivery. Right, we're talking very expensive high-end restaurants, made a lot of money with alcohol sales. A lot of the government and the regulations needed to change. But once we got through that, some of the high-end restaurants are now digital. They shifted to engage with their customers on social media. They were doing virtual wine tastings where they were shipping out. They were doing cocktail engagements. And the only reason why I know this is because my son was doing one for Hennessy last night as a bartender. And as a mother listening to him, one of the things he was talking about is the experience now is very hard. And they were looking to make sure that they could connect with their brand advocates so that when we do go back, they thought of the butcher chef to come back to. And they kept up that engagement. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my 25-year-old son really working at what we've been all trying to advocate for over this past year. I was floored. I was absolutely floored. But it was a wonderful experience that he was delivering. And it came down to cocktails. So again, there are so many different ways. And there was another comment that I lost that came across.
Yeah,
well, I think something he said that's really important is this idea of doing things virtually that you used to only do in the physical world. So I was lucky enough to do a few of these cocktail and wine things with different vendors I work with. But another client of one of our clients, a beekeeper, they had a lot of people coming to their physical location before COVID to do workshops and seminars and learn about beekeeping and this, that, and the other thing. And he took all of that online. And I think he had like 170% increase in revenues. And his plan is to do both now, as the pandemic, eases, because he attracted a lot of customers that were not in his local area. So he'll continue to do all this great outreach virtually with them. But he knows that he's talked to a lot of the people that are close and they want to come back. They want to, be more hands-on again.
Yeah, well, puppy training, guys. It went digital. It went digital. There's puppy training digital, bringing that back.
Yeah.
But the question
is totally different too. Yeah.
I think the virtual experience has opened up a lot of opportunities for sure for a lot of small businesses.
Yeah.
And most of them will continue to do that at some level for sure.
And then the question at hand, by Pranil, is really about implementing end-to-end business process automation. And that's a fully loaded question. So that was something I had brought up earlier with respect to my digital maturity model. But what I can share is that we've made some great headway over this past year, even though everyone's been sheltering in. What we have seen is great improvement in a reduction of manual processes. So whether it's end-to-end, that really is going to vary based on what you're trying to accomplish. No one's going to say no to an end-to-end business process automation. But I can tell you that companies that were much more manually processed prior to COVID, with the latest fielding we have, a lot of them have shifted into some or most of their business processes are now highly automated, where before that was not the case. So that came along with a shift to cloud, that came along with more of an investment in intelligent automation and business processes that were predicted to have been done over the next 3 to 5 years. So in 2016 and 17, we really talked about a lot of the investment in manual processes, a lot of the investments in automation and AI and machine learning. And granted, 3 to 5 years later, the ones that did do that are reaping the benefits. So we do have to take stock in what are those business processes. You might not be able to do it end to end, but we can slowly start reducing some of these manual processes to make them much more digital. What the challenges are that you're going to face is a lot of companies don't even know what those processes are. So taking stock, taking inventory, understanding how to then automate those, what tools do you do, and then how do you overlay some of the legacy applications that might be today, or in terms of small and medium-sized businesses, really investing in software for the first time.
I think a lot of the small and medium businesses, they've invested in a lot of cloud software, and they've probably automated maybe more than you thought, you think, but they haven't integrated. And so what we're seeing coming out really strongly now is there's just certain business processes, across CRM and financials that they really want to have integrated. They see that, trying to do this with Excel or via emails and exchanging data all kinds of clunky ways, or even custom code isn't really working. And so we see a lot of vendors focusing on that, which is great. I mean, HubSpot and Intuit, for the very small business market, like under 20 employees, they just did a great integration of those two solutions that just hones in on the very basic things that people are trying to do. You create an invoice in HubSpot, it automatically goes over to QuickBooks, and everybody can be in their own application, but the information flows. Moving up a little, you've got something like, Sage Intacct and Salesforce CRM that's a really, really great integration. So I think we're going to see more of the SMBs anyway, looking across what they do and saying, where are the connections that we need to make to really kind of take the time out of doing these processes that we have to do over and over, where we're making a lot of mistakes because the data is getting entered multiple times. And, you know, the end-to-end kind of thing is something I think they see the value of, but it's something most will have to do more incrementally.
Yeah, but the good news is that when I do look at things like low code and no code technologies, and the fact that we do have the power and the platform now today across even small businesses and large businesses, we're able to address some of those long tail processes that we never had before. So it's great that CRM does what it does, but a lot of what's in between is a lot of custom work that used to be hard coded in the past. And so now we're able to embrace some of these new in-between platform products that are solving some of these one-off processes that aren't packaged. And the fact that we're doing in a codeless environment is really a game changer for a lot of these businesses, because you don't need to understand a lot of these technologies. It's point and click, but that's where I get at is, what are you trying to automate? So there's a lot we can do. And to me, it's those long tail approaches of take a look at what the applications aren't solving today, and then take a look at what the partners are or what the platform can do from a low code, no code standpoint, and create it, because it really can just be a form that's intelligently automated that can reduce some of these, shall I say, personalized customer experiences that are one-offs within your own organization.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of guidance for what challenges and what advice, we've just had a year-plus long laboratory session on those things. So if you want to know, throw yourself a global health crisis where people can't work the way that they've normally been able to, see what processes fail, fix them, use those fixes. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of times, you know, especially in the smaller companies, it's kind of as you grow, you see where all the warts are, right? You know, all of a sudden you're processing, you know, double or triple the amount of invoices, you know, or your customer. And this is going to happen more and more as we come back, you know, as we recover. And so I think a lot of times these pain points come pretty in your face. You can kind of see the problem right there. And it's a volume problem, and you're putting too much manual labor into it. And there's definitely ways to automate all that. And sometimes it may be in the solution you already use, and you don't even know this trick or this hack or whatever is there. I mean, you know, so talk to the vendor first, because you might be, I'm sure there's a lot of HubSpot and Intuit customers that don't know these two now integrate so much better, right? And I just think that most of the time in the smaller companies anyway, it's pretty obvious what's slowing you down. And the things that are slowing you down are what you concentrate on first.
Yeah, this is one of those fortunate times when opportunity is the tail side of the crisis coin. We are learning a lot and have learned a lot from this. And I think that it's going to drive the next round of technological innovation, of business process innovation, of just, you know, the new workplace. And, you know, while I have gone on record as saying I've gotten sick of the phrase "the new normal,"
I say the reimagined world.
Okay, there's a good one. The reimagined world. I really do believe that that these problems, this plague, has sown the seeds of what will be a different working world. What I wonder is how much people are really willing to go back to what came before, and, you know, how hard they're going to hold on to what has changed. You know, we were talking about, you know, the 100% capacity restaurant. Even before COVID, I wouldn't go into 100% full restaurant. I just don't want that kind of noise.
Yeah.
That was nice. I wind up having to wait in line here for a lot of the good restaurants, but
Yeah, but just in terms of how we do business now,
Yeah.
and I'm going to look at this. I should be looking at this from a customer experience point of view, but I'm going to look at it from an employee experience point of view. People went home and still had to do their work, and they have adapted mostly pretty well, I think. But I'm wondering how that adaptation is going to last over time. Remember, once upon a time, there were no laptop computers. If you wanted to do your work on a computer, you had to go to your office. Then there were laptops, and work followed you home. And then they got lighter, and your work followed you on the road. Then you got your cell phone, and your work followed you into the car. And you see where I'm going with this.
This is a disturbing pattern.
Yeah,
Laurie,
where work has followed you into your bedroom if you let it.
Okay, let's not go there.
Let's
not go there. Let's not go there.
Well, that's another career we can talk. But what I'm saying, I think, is how well are people going to be able to set their boundaries? Because in the past, workers have been terrible at that, especially salespeople. And I don't just want to, somebody's laundry's ready. And I don't just want to call out salespeople, but we are doing, we do more at home. We can't get away from work now. It has followed us in through the front door, and it's here to stay. What are we going to do to make sure that work remains work?
New Dell monitor.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Talking about equally.
Okay.
Yeah, but how do we make sure work remains work and home remains home?
How apropos, because she just got her
Obviously,
monitor
we
delivered to
can't
work.
when we work at home.
Yeah. All right.
No, I think
I'm
you're
done.
right, though, Marshall. I think I saw a great thing. I'll post it on this afterwards about the old definition of success and the new definition of success. The old definition of success was about salary and title. The new definition of success is those are part of the puzzle, but it's also about your personal time, how much you like what you do. All these other factors have to come into the equation. And I anecdotally, I'd have to say a lot of people I know seem to have become more grounded in what's really important, their families, their relationships, their well-being, things like that. And so I think, again, it just points to the fact that the whole psychology of how we're going to want to work, how we're going to want to shop, how we're going to want to do everything, we're in flux. And hopefully, I'm hopeful that we're changing for the better.
Yeah, so prior to COVID, we had this problem, right? This was not a new problem. The only thing is COVID now put an extremely sharp lens on the situation.
Yeah.
I've been a remote worker for 2 decades, 20 years. I spend more time as a remote worker than I've ever been in an office. And it's always been that way prior to digital, right? So I was a remote worker even prior to a dial-up service. Yeah. The question really comes down to is this put more of an emphasis on how are we going to actually manage in this more of a world where people are now demanding the remote worker, where before it was a one-off, it was a handful of gig economy. It was some people, like maybe some businesses were less than 5%, 10%. And now if we really take a look at it, we're looking at a completely different employee that is now realizing that they don't mind working from home. And no longer are they going to have the power given to the HR departments and corporates to say you have to now go back into an office full time. And so that's really going to be an interesting year that we talk about for 2022 as the employee empowerment is really changing the shifting dynamics of the experience. And we've learned that we can support these workers remotely with new tools and more video conferencing, and we've improved our own skill sets and collaboration that we might not have had before. So it forced old managers to learn and collaborate in a digital world. It made this new world of digital experiences in the customer service environment become much more of a forefront. So the question's going to be, how are we going to balance that moving forward?
In how far do you, both of you, think that we are moving from a situation where people want to work at home and need to work from home to companies probably demanding that their employees are able and willing to work from anywhere?
Demanding from a corporate standpoint or demanding from the employee standpoint?
No, from a corporate standpoint. So now we have invested in all this digital stuff. Yeah, we have set up an horribly
we can see,
infrastructure, and now you better use it. So
I mean, we can see companies like Dropbox already, you know, big companies taking this virtual first approach, right? Where, you know, the way their offices are going to be set up is just to bring people in for the activities that need, you know, are better in a collaborative environment. But the virtual first is the primary work style. But I think we'll have a whole continuum of companies, you know, ones that, you know, are chomping at the bit to get everybody back and on the clock, to ones like, you know, Dropbox. And then there's a lot of companies, you know, my monitor just came, Dell has had over 50% of their workforce virtual since way before the pandemic. So we're in a world now where I think a lot more models can thrive, but I think what's going to be important is for companies to understand the employees and what the employee considerations are, and to have a strategy for virtual and in office, like Dropbox does, for instance, where they've identified certain kinds of work that, you know, are best done together in person. They've put people in groups where there's only certain hours where you can have, you know, virtual meetings, so that there's a time overlap between time zones at work. So somebody doesn't need to be in a meeting at 1 a.m. their time. So you really have to think about all this, and you really have to do it, I think, intentionally and you know, kind of learn as you go. But it's more than just saying some people are going to be in the office and some people are going to be home and some people are going to be doing both. There's a lot more planning involved to make it work well.
Yeah. Let's circle it a little back. There was a particular question that I now need to find, because there have been so many comments here, which is, do I find?
Right?
Where is it?
No problem. It was a question to Laurie, called the SMBs, and it was asking exactly what the problem-solving aspect would be in on the lady's experience.
And this is probably also, let me interfere for a second, please. This is also a question for Sheryl, because in my enterprise experience that I have working with enterprises, not only with SMBs, they have quite some particular problems as well. So it's very interesting to see whether these are the same in your eyes or different ones. Sorry.
Where do they differ? Yeah, this is interesting.
Laurie, why don't you start, and then I'll add in.
Well, we've been doing this research for over 10 years now with SMBs, and it really, at the core of it, it hasn't changed that much. So very small companies, it's all about growing revenues, getting more customers in the door, that kind of thing. As you would expect. I mean, you don't have a business if you don't have customers. And then as they grow, it gets more into the concerns about, getting the right people, keeping them, keeping the employees engaged and, having high retention and getting everybody productive and collaborating effectively. And then as they grow to the next level, we find a lot of the problems they're trying to solve are around external communication, with their suppliers and their partners and, and their customers as well, on the customer experience front and things like that. So it's kind of a continuum, and there's no one problem. SMBs are really, really diverse. But as a generalization, I think that's how we see it go. Initially, it's all about creating the business, getting the demand. Then it's about getting the people you need to grow and keep fulfilling that demand so you can grow more. And then it's about, okay, how do we expand this network with more suppliers and partners and people that we need to do this more effectively and on a broader scale.
So what I'm seeing, I look at it from the small, medium-sized businesses along with all the way up to the enterprise, depending on the hat that I put in. From the macroeconomic side, we have a lot of small businesses that we actually try to measure. And the number one thing that's really happened over this past year was access to capital. So that, it really comes down to lack of funding sometimes, lack of capital, and how they can move forward. When you look beyond that, then they do talk about where they're investing that capital. And it really is around that, what Laurie was saying, the customer experience delivery is one of the top investments that they're really trying to solve. And then after that, it gets back to employee empowerment. And how we're going to make sure that we're really handling those employees appropriate, but having the right skill set, having the right training. On the enterprise side, it's not that different. It's just they might have a little bit, depending on where you are, deeper connection to capital. And so then it moves down to, when you look at it from the standpoint of the business, they're still trying to shift to the customer delivery side, right? So what are we doing to adapt? How are we empowering our employees with new tools? But a lot of it from an IT standpoint, again, we look at it from the business standpoint and again, for the IT standpoint, it really does come down to things like legacy applications and the fact that they're hamstrung with a lot of legacy tools. Organizational silos and dynamics is usually the number 2 one. And why am I blanking? Oh, privacy and security at the enterprise standpoint. There's a lot of concern right now around data privacy, data security, and managing risk. And so those are the top 3 at the enterprise side. That's really changed this past year. Huge escalation around managing risk, huge shift towards understanding and shifting the legacy technology out there, and then really empowering their employees.
So what you're basically saying is that COVID compounded GDPR and CCPA.
It's more than that. It's just the environment of working in a digital world changed the way we're managing the risk in that digital world. So really understanding the threat assessment with digital security, we had to look at things like contactless payments in the smaller businesses, the retail store, huge pickup there and consumer adoption in the US, where the rest of the world was already there, right? They were just behind. And so a lot of this change brings risk. And so, yes, we've got issues around GDPR and CCPA in California, but we didn't have a lot of leadership on how to handle that from a regulatory compliance standpoint. And that will change in this upcoming year.
Yeah, the work from home situation too, we see with the small and medium businesses, there's a lot of concern about data privacy and security because everybody's, working from home. And a lot of times they don't have the same kind of network and device security that they might have while they're in the office. So it has definitely exacerbated what's always been a huge concern, which is security and privacy.
Okay, so there was this one thing that we had in the beginning, so we got pushed into one direction, strong digitalization. And well, if you push something into one direction, there sooner or later is a force that pulls back. So what do you foresee there, Sheryl?
Yeah, see, while I do see the push to digitalization, I don't see the pendulum swinging back all the way, right? We've made investments in digital transformation. We've seen this prior to COVID. I'm just open. opening up some of my stats here. When we track it from 2016 all the way up to 2020, we went from less than a third having formal strategies up to a little under a half to now over 50% having these formal digital transformation strategies. That's not going to swing back. We're not going to swing back to only 30% having formal strategies. So that's going to stay. I think the fact that we're really still trying to get at this single view of the customer, understanding our customer and really improving customer delivery, that's not going to swing back. That's swung in priority for the good. Where I think we're going to have a little bit of a swing has to do with the direction of how we're going to take those shifts, right? So is IT, it really comes back to the whole IT and line of business disconnect. And sometimes line of business has the empowerment and sometimes they don't. And so one of the things I'm really looking at is one of those new line of businesses that are really taking a look at it. And some of the old guard and the new guard is what I've been talking about for the future. So the old guard was really around your IT infrastructure and maybe the CIO, right? The new guard is really around the CDO, the chief digital officer and the chief data officer, really becoming much more influential in these digitally driven organizations. And why that's so important is because if we really talk about improving the customer experience is very data driven, we're talking about the fact that we're really looking at these new metrics that we're trying to measure in the new world. And the fact that, again, I bring it back to something I said in the beginning of the session, that digitally driven organizations that were embracing these strategies prior to COVID, again, had success. So 3 to 5 years ago, we predicted this would happen. The reality is it did happen, and they were able to engage, and they were able to pivot, and they were pivoting primarily because they were more advanced going into the situation of the crisis. And so we have to learn from that, and hopefully the pendulum won't pivot back. We will just continue to pivot back and forth till we get it right.
Laurie?
Well, I think as a lot of people have said, the digital push came to shove with COVID, right? Everybody was kind of on a path or a trajectory to automate and digitize more of their businesses prior to COVID. And COVID just really accelerated a lot of these initiatives. And, I totally agree that from the side of the seller or the vendor that's selling something to someone, that is totally going to continue because there's so much benefit to the vendor, both from the automation and the insights, right? From digitizing their processes. I do think, though, from the actual consumer, whether it's a B2B or a B2C consumer of whatever product, service, hybrid that you might want to buy, though, I think that's the big unknown. I think the big unknown is how much and how far are people going to start craving some of the experiences that they really enjoyed pre-COVID, and what is going to kind of fall by the wayside and not come back, which just again reinforces the fact that you have to really have your ear to the ground with the customers and know kind of how their preferences are changing. And it's not, it's going to probably be changing for a long, long time.
Okay, so as the hour is coming up, so first of all, we will be available as long as you can be available, and we can talk a lot. So that's.
You may have noticed.
It's an offer. So if you need to drop out, it's fine.
I can stay till about 2:15.
I can't. I have a 2 o'clock I have to get to.
Okay, then it's good. Then Sheryl, first the question to you. I avoided the word digital transformation. Do you see that the companies are undergoing a digital transformation, or are they just, in quotes, digitalizing their processes?
So the way I look at digital transformation is just one aspect, right? So digital transformation is more than just technology. It's around the organizational culture. It's around where companies are going. And then I correlate that to their adoption of technology. So it's more than just the transformational aspect itself. It's how you're using the transformation as an opportunity for business transformation. And I don't think the pendulum is going to swing back. And I do think it's going to continue to move forward because we predicted that 3 to 5 years ago, and it really did come true this past year. What I'm starting to look forward to now is looking beyond digital transformation. It's not a project that's going to end. 63% of businesses now understand that it's an ongoing process that's always going to be embraced. And that's a good thing. What's really interesting coming up and what I'm looking for in 2021 is how we're becoming much more data-driven and how we're going to be data-driven in real time. And there are some businesses now that are behind, ones that just are making very few decisions with data at their fingertips, as compared to other ones that actually are making more decisions in real time that's much more data-driven. And you're going to see an inflection point, just like we did with companies that embraced digital transformation 3 to 5 years ago, with ones that are now starting to become much more data-driven, because a part of what we talk about is the data-driven experience economy. And so as we move forward, what I'm trying to do is take a look at businesses that are digitally driven and correlate them to ones that are actually using data in real time and how they're going to transform in the future, whether that be continually agile and adapting or understanding that in 2021, we're going to have to constantly iterate and continue to iterate moving forward. And I don't think that's going to change in the near term.
Okay. So for the sake of your time, so I just want to say a big thank you to both of you. We are not going offline, by the way. So big thank you to the both of you, because you turned the stuff up that I created into something that was even more amazing than I could have imagined.
Thank you.
It was
And if
really,
I have
really great.
I have a wish, Thomas, we love to give you also a platform and an option. If you want to share some of your knowledge, which is available, we are happy to put this in the link sites after we have finalized the talk and publish it into our channels. So if there is something you would love to share, we are honored to do so, and we are happy to give something to the audience, because sharing is caring. And in these times, it's fantastic to have such knowledgeable experts at our end and helping to find a positive mindset approach. Thank you for that as well.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out if anyone wants any of those stats that I mentioned or any of the upcoming data. Connect with me on LinkedIn or reach out to me at Sheryl with an S .kingstone@spglobal.com or at @skingstone on Twitter. So thank you.
Thanks heaps, Sheryl.
And we have to share the links to the puppy pictures.
Oh, absolutely. I've got another one coming in 2 weeks. So
Oh, wow.
yeah.
2 of them are already known, Laurie. We put them online, right?
True.
Mine will be coming back home in 15 minutes. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Nice seeing you,
thanks,
Sheryl.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you, Sheryl.
Laurie, same question to you. So digitalization versus digital transformation, which is...
Well, we ask a question on the surveys we've been doing for the last few years. Basically, are you changing your business strategy, your business processes, your business model, right? And then are you using technology to enable that? And, because I think, and I think Sheryl said this another way, but just automating a process isn't really transforming anything. I mean, it's making it better. It's making it more efficient, but it's not really transforming. So we're looking at what they're changing, their overall business strategy, their business model, what the products and services they sell, whatever. And then are they using technology? And we've definitely seen that growing. So we see, about 40% even of SMBs trying to do that. And it may be something as simple as what I mentioned about the beekeepers, where I'm going to do a lot of the kinds of events I had physically at my own location, I'm doing online as a virtual service. So it's not necessarily on the grand scale of, Amazon or something. But for whatever size company you are, I think we're definitely seeing more small and medium businesses understand that there are new opportunities that lie out there if they can do things differently. And a lot of times technology is a key enabler for that.
I'm beginning to wonder if we hurt ourselves by coming up with the phrase digital transformation.
Yeah.
Because it suggests that it's a thing that you can do and be done with. And that it's different from what was going on before, which was adapting new technologies and new ideas to your business. Yeah, that has been going on as long as businesses have existed.
Yeah.
I agree, Marshall. I mean, first of all, there's not a start and end point to it.
Yeah.
And second of all, it sounds almost overly daunting for a lot of people, right? It sounds like this huge thing. I mean, and a few years ago, like 5 years ago, when we first started asking about it, the vast majority of SMBs had never even heard of it. So now I'd say the vast majority have heard of it. And a good percentage of them believe they are acting on it. But the definition of digital transformation, I challenge anybody to come up with a standard one. And, we're all going to have our own. So it's something very amorphous, I guess I'm saying.
Yeah, it's got to be our fault.
By the way, there's an article of mine somewhere on the web.
About that?
Yeah, digitization versus digitalization versus digital transformation.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm sure Paul Greenberg.
I'd love to get your feedback.
Yeah, and you got to think too. Like we're sitting here at this 1,000-foot level talking about this stuff. Again, especially if you own a karate studio, if you own an accountancy practice. If you own, I have a friend who owns about a 6-chain restaurant only in this area, right? They're not talking about these terms. They're talking about the bottom line of the business, the customer, what they sell, what they do, how they do it. What can stay the same? What needs to be changed? How are they going to change it? What part is people? What kind of part is technology? What part is other equipment that has, just they need, I don't know, in the restaurant, they need nicer tables and chairs or something, where they need plexiglass between tables. So we have to take a step back, I think, sometimes, and not only think about things from this technology lens, but from the lens of a true business owner.
Absolutely.
And it is not only the mom and pop shop owner, it's also small independent consultants which are hunting down for their customers and their needs and the customer benefit, and to do the chasing in a smart way, such as what we do as an appel, such as please think about what your customer really needs. Don't sell any crap, but sell the stuff they need. Yeah, this is
want. Yeah.
Deliver
and,
value.
I think the other thing is that in our industry, we I know we do a lot of research with the small and medium businesses, and you just find that they just don't talk about this the way that a lot of technologists or analysts or whatever would talk about it. And the other thing is that there's a lot of pontificating in the analyst, consultant, guru, I don't know what else we can call it, about what companies should do without a lot of actual practical hands-on experience, right? So, in terms of use of a lot of these technologies, a lot of these solutions and things like that, And when you actually do try to use some of them, and I will say this from personal experience, with CRM, we've gone through like 3 or 4 of them because they're, we're small. They're not often very easy to use. They do not integrate well a lot of times with the other stuff you need them to integrate with. And especially, again, if you don't have a lot of IT resources and stuff like that, the mountain is so high to climb up. So it's one thing to say, oh, everybody should do this and everybody should do that. And, but actually executing on what you should do. I mean, that was actually a question we had once, basically the bottom line was like 85% knew they should do this in terms of automating and digitizing, but only 25% felt they had the means to do so between budget and people and expertise and everything else, or even just figuring out what the heck is of all these 860 bazillion solutions out there. How do I even find the time to figure out which one's going to work for me? So I think we just have to take a step back sometime into reality and say, it's not easy.
It's a simple question. If I go across the street to my favorite döner, and the chaps had a lot of problems sorting to get their stuff sold over the counter. So they got a new window which they could open, like in the good old days where you had simply serving out of the window. Yeah.
Right.
But you had to organize. You had to get the money from the bank. You had to get the craftsmen which deliver you the special designed window.
I love this. This is perfect.
Yeah. But
what a great example.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the pragmatic kind of thought. But really, in terms of digitizing, automating, even very small businesses, overwhelming majority get the benefit. But a lot of times the hurdles are high to do it the way they know they could get benefit, but they just are stuck.
True. And it takes a lot to just get you out of how you always used to do something. And a new way of doing it. To your point with, 85% of people know that they should be doing something some way.
Yeah.
I know that I should always be working in my CRM. I'm a CRM analyst. I mean, if I don't know that, I need to just hang it up and work in a gas station. But I often forget to look or forget to put a note in there. And while I may advise, why isn't that information in your CRM? Everything should go there. Everyone should be working there. Here's how you get people to use it.
It's kind of like exercise. We all know we should be exercising every day, but a lot of us don't do it.
Today.
I don't have enough time. I don't have enough, whatever. I have to do all these other things.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's very simple.
Because you spend
to take you the time.
Yeah. Yes, you do. Because especially in a smaller company, you spend so much time working in the business, just handling the day-to-day, right? That you have to do every day to just keep things in motion, keep all the balls up in the air. Just to peel back and say, okay, I'm going to work on the business. I'm going to work on fixing these things that are really grinding me down and wearing me out. It takes sometimes a very superhuman effort to do that, but it's well worth it once you do.
I think this now goes to a perfect closing word. I'm conscious of being the 15 minutes that you mentioned a little earlier. So from my end, from our end, a big thank you. Really enjoyed. So
thank you.
It was a really great conversation.